Hello everybody, thank you for joining us for today's video. So last week we finished up talking about social relationships as kind of the second part of our talking about being a well-rounded person. So from work to social relationships, and now we're going to start for the next few videos talking about routine. Routine being a part of being a well-rounded person. And I don't understand routine because I don't do it, so this one's going to be on you guys.
I worry there's going to be a lot of comments that are not to our liking on this section. Why routine? Why do we think, you mentioned that it's probably worth being included in the idea of being well-rounded. I'm curious why this is a topic that we chose. I mean, I'm sure I'll say
you already know the answer.
Yeah.
If anyone does. I think I am maybe naturally inclined to not be routined, and have probably lived most of my life not very routined, and probably still am not super routined. I try, but because of that, and especially once I got married to my wife, who is very routined, when I am routine, I very obviously see the benefits of it, and so I'm well aware of the benefits, even if I don't like it.
Yeah, I would say that, just in treatment, for example, when we're treating somebody who's had something like complex trauma in their life or any kind of mental disorder, one of the things that is most important for us as mental health providers to look at is, what does this person's day-to-day life look like? Because if there are certain things that are happening or not happening every single day, in a large part it can predict how mentally well the person is. So for example, and these are the answers no one likes to hear. No one ever wants to hear me say this stuff to them, but I'll ask them questions like, are you sleeping regularly, and how many hours, and during nighttime hours? And are you eating 3 times a day? And are you making sure to fuel your body well? Are you drinking water? Right? Some of these super basic structured kind of things that you can set up during your day really do set the stage for you to have good mental health. But it's not necessarily the funnest topic to talk about. Everybody wants to know all of this, how do I heal my inner child kind of stuff, but nobody wants to think about did I actually go to bed at 10 o'clock last night and get up at 6?
Oh man, I went to bed at 11 o'clock last night and I am paying for it.
I don't remember last time I went to bed before 11.
One of the things I've noticed that I always find interesting is if you look at the criteria, let's just go for an anxiety disorder. You often have intrusive thoughts, so you're ruminating. Your body feels tight, feels tense. You feel like you're on edge. And there's constantly this thought about why. I don't know if you guys have noticed this in your therapy, but everybody wants to know the why of things. I don't know the why of everything, right? Why am I sad today? Beats me. I just know that you are sad, right? Now, there's worth looking into that, but one of the things about anxiety that I see a lot is anxiety is oftentimes worry about things that are unknown, right? What's coming up in the future? How am I going to handle this job interview? The what if question is almost always related to why. My argument is that develop a little bit of a routine and a chunk of the future. People who do not live in my same home know where to find me at most hours of the day, because it's the same every freaking day. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I actually think just by doing these simple things that you talk about, Shara, developing a routine naturally has the tendency to at least decrease some anxiety, because it takes a lot of the unknown away.
It's kind of interesting to hear you talk about this. Having known you for 7 or 8 years, I would say that you're one of the most well-regulated people that I know.
Oh my gosh.
I've seen you in a variety of situations, and I would say you're pretty well-regulated. I would also say you're one of the most routine people that I know.
Would you?
I could predict, like you said, I could predict any time, day or night, where you're going to be. I know exactly. Even if it's a Saturday, right? I know, hey, if I send Josh a text right now, he's going to be at the gym. I'm going to interrupt that. Right? But I also think that there's some connection between those two things. Because when you have a routine, when you have something that's really predictable from day to day, your body can settle into a space of what we call felt safety, right? This ability to feel safe and to have this kind of feeling of safety that just goes with you from place to place, because you're not constantly being bombarded with all of these things that are outside of the norm that signal your fight or flight system, right? Instead, your body can kind of, like you said, kind of predict. It knows from day to day what everything is going to look like. So that sets the stage for you being able to be more well regulated.
I also think there's an aspect to it that's like kind of going back to maybe when we were talking about work and employment, right? Do you have somewhere to be and you have a schedule and you're productive? I think having any kind of routine plays into that same idea where even if it's a Saturday and you don't work, right? I assume that you've probably got a plan for what you're going to do tomorrow, feeling on a Friday, right? And you can go through your Saturday, even if you don't work, you have a routine, you're going to check so many boxes through your day that by the time you go to bed Saturday night, even without work, you feel like you accomplished something throughout the day and that you were somewhat productive, which is really important for our brains.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that researchers have said has been scientifically proven to help depression, right? Is that you feel like you accomplished something every day, even if it's not a big thing, but accomplishing something really does have a good impact on our mental health.
Yeah.
The other thing that I like about routine as I'm thinking about this is keep in mind that life can't always operate in a routine, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to have a curveball. You're going to have plans that come up. If you were to talk to my wife, and probably extends to my wife's family, they'll all tell you I'm like not enjoyable on vacation. And it's true. And I still try and routine my vacation as much as possible, but I feel so outside of my element that I do struggle a little bit. But what I like about the routine is that when you do have a curveball, it doesn't always feel like it's coming from left field. I guess I'm using baseball analogies. It just feels like a curveball. And if your life is not, this might sound rude, if it's not disorganized and chaotic, you can handle a curveball much better than if you saw it coming from left field. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so if 80% of my time is fairly routine and regulated, then when something happens in that 80% that's not normal, it's easier to kind of recover and get back into things. So I imagine that not only does it help with some of the anxiety, but if things go a different way, you can kind of manage that too.
It's almost like taking what you're saying and reframing it to like in that anxiety perspective, you're controlling what you can control and dealing with what you can't as it comes instead of worrying about it. Sum that up?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so usually in the first video we talk about why routine's important. Any downside to routines?
Well, if you don't enjoy your vacation, I would say that's a downside.
I think I do most of the time.
Yeah, I think anytime, this is like, I guess the tricky part of everything we talk about is there's always a balance, right? And you have to, as good as routine is, you also have to have some level of flexibility in that, or you're going to have a really hard time when something throws off your routine, which I think I see a lot when I work with people who are really routine. That's the thing they struggle with rather than the opposite.
Yeah. I would also say routine does not equal fun.
Sure.
That's
definitely
not even
true.
a thing, right? So I think that routines are great and it does help us have felt safety, but does that automatically build fun into your life and play into your life and spontaneous kinds of things? No, that's not what that means. There's nothing like really super exciting about going to bed at 10 o'clock at night.
No.
It's not super fun. And I think that sometimes you get labeled as a bit of a buzzkill when you're the person who sticks to some of these routine things. So I think that that's probably one of the downsides. And one of the things that I think deters people from having more of a routine is that it doesn't feel fun. And so if it's not something that you've spent a large portion of your life doing, it can really feel like a bit of a downer.
Oh, for sure. I'm glad you said it because that's really like the biggest piece of feedback that I get when working with clients and talking about routine.
Is that you're no fun?
That's the comment I get.
That's true. That's the one we give Sharon. No, but the idea is that life becomes perhaps a little bit less enjoyable.
Sure.
And that's a hard one to argue with because it's probably true.
Yeah, and I would say like, yes, it maybe becomes less enjoyable in the short term and more enjoyable in the long term.
It's the hope. Yeah.
Yeah. You think of like, everyone hears the story of like Warren Buffett, right? He's like however old he is and has been eating McDonald's breakfast, the same breakfast every single day for 70 years, right? And so he seems okay.
Yeah.
He's got $1 bazillion. That helps, I'm sure. But
I can't imagine McDonald's. What is it? A sausage McMuffin? I wonder what he's seen like the
I don't
cost
know.
of the McMuffin.
If I was going to eat McDonald's every day, that's not what I would pick. But
Same. Yeah. The other thing that I can think of, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, a downside to routine is there are times where developing a routine can almost become so routine that you don't have flexibility anymore. I feel like I remember talking a fair bit about this in the past working with like addictions. You can definitely become addicted to the gym, right? You can start to become addicted to the way that you look and the foods that you eat, and you gotta have French fries on occasion, you know, or in my case, more than occasion.
regularly, I would say. Yeah.
Yes, regularly. But that might be a downside too.
Yeah, I would say that that's totally true. Any of these concepts, if you take them to an extreme,
Yeah.
are no longer healthy, right? So I do think there's a way to take this idea of predictability and routine too far. Like, you
Yeah.
definitely can take it too far. And I do think that that tends to be sometimes something people struggle with. Sometimes when we see people who are really great at routine, it is hard for them to be a bit flexible. So I think finding a middle ground with it is hard.
Yeah.
There's an analogy I heard that I really like where he compares it to like a piano, right? And if you're trying to play a song on a piano, but you're so fixated on these two notes, right? These two parts of your life, maybe the gym and what you eat, and you keep playing those two notes over and over again, it's never going to sound very nice or be music or be fulfilling, right? It requires, music is a balance of lots of different notes together and alternating and changing, and but not chaotic and disorganized either. So I really like thinking of it that way.
I'm actually really glad that you said that, because I think that pulls into the picture one of the big points that we're trying here with this this podcast or these videos is creating well-roundedness. If a routine is only in a couple of areas, then you become a triangle. If you've got 3 areas, you're a triangle, right? We want to have points all the way around, and so let's not just play 2 notes on the keyboard or the piano.
Could be a keyboard.
Could be a
Depends
keyboard.
how exciting you are, I guess.
It would definitely have to be a keyboard. One that has like the autoplay button.
Just does it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I really like that analogy too. And I think it's helpful to think that when you're trying to figure out what your routine or schedule is going to be, there does need to be room for other things in there. But actually, if you have some things that are already predictable, like Josh was saying, then if you throw in some of these extra notes, it enhances your life instead of making a cacophony, right?
Sure.
Well, as you said that, it brought back a memory. I remember when I was in college doing my bachelor's degree, in order to make myself have the ability to work the number of hours I wanted and still go to school plus internship, I was working at a grocery store, and I had to take a really early shift to unload the truck at 3 a.m. once a week. It was the most brutal, because one day a week you get up at 2:30 in the morning, but the rest of the time you get up at, I was a later riser back then.
Yeah, I was like, wow. Yeah.
It was probably
That's
more
when
like
Josh gets up.
It was probably more like 6 back then, but yeah, to go from 6 at most days to all of a sudden 2:30 one day. I'll never forget the embarrassment of missing my shift one time, and I got there about 5 and my boss was already there. Oh, I felt so bad.
We've all done that.
Anyway, sure. Anyway.
Josh only did it that once.
Only once. Well, anything you guys want to add about this before we wrap it up?
No, I would just think that one of the most important things for everybody to think about is what's going to set the stage for good mental health for you, right? Those are the kinds of things that have to be included in your everyday. So we talk about all of these different aspects of what makes a well-rounded person. Well, those things actually need to be part of your routine, part of your daily routine if you want to be mentally well. Sometimes I feel like we focus so much on mental health treatment, and I wish we would focus a little bit more on things that we can do to prevent the need for mental health treatment, right? Mm-hmm. Treatment's like a downstream kind of an activity, and if we could deal with some of these things and do some more preventative type strategies, I think all of us could be so much healthier.
The only other thing that I would add to that, just briefly, because I think we'll talk about it in a later video, but if you're going to start creating a routine, it actually works out well to go slow. one of the biggest things that I personally believe, if you take like a New Year's resolution, the biggest reason New Year's resolutions end is because people try and make too many changes at too quick of a pace.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to try and be a well-rounded person and you're going to try and do employment and education and routine and diet and physical exercise, make a couple of changes and do those couple of changes every day for a week, and then maybe we add a third one, and then, so that's the only other thing I would add. We'll probably talk about that later on, but if we're going to make a change, go slow.
Sure.
It's
You don't
okay.
need to remodel your life all in a week.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Life remodel, I like that.
Me too.
Well, I like that tip. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for today's video. Stay tuned for the next one. We'll keep talking about routine and some other aspects of maybe the problems if you don't have it, barriers and things like that. And we'll keep going. So if you have any comments or questions, we'd love to chat. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks.
See you next week.